Hello, and welcome to Nothing But Dicta, where nothing is binding, and we like it that way. I'm your host, Eric Levine, and today we're bringing you part one of a two-part series on mock trial, when I talk to two current students, James Cowan and Cameron Costello. In part one, we talk about the benefits of participating in mock trial, and in part two, they share how they prepare for tournaments. Without further ado, here's part one. My first guest is James Cowan. He's a secretary of the Mock Trial Board, and he has 6 years' experience participating in mock trial. In addition to advancing to the quarterfinals, he made board through the 1L competition, and prior to law school, he advanced to the nationals round of the American Mock Trial Association competition. Welcome to the podcast, James.
Hi, thanks for having me. Great to be here.
And our second guest, not to be outdone, is Cameron Costello. Cam, while having a shorter resume, is no less illustrious. Having no mock trial experience prior to law school, she advanced all the way to the final in the 1L competition and followed that up again with a quarterfinal placement in the external. Welcome to the podcast, Cam.
So happy to be here. Thank you.
So let's go ahead and dive into why our listeners should do mock trial. We're going to start with you, James. What are some of the skills that you've learned from doing mock trial?
I mean, probably there's a lot of skills you get out of mock trial. Obviously, like the longer you do it, the more you get. You know, off the top of my head, of course, evidentiary knowledge. For one, like I have the fortune of like knowing evidence by the back of my hand by now, 6 years later, as well as public speaking skills, the ability to speak on the fly. You know, having an answer within seconds of after getting a question you had no idea was coming. And of course, just I think it did a lot for in terms of, you know, orienting yourself towards law school. You know, you kind of learn that the law isn't perfect and sometimes judges make mistakes. So it's kind of dealing with that early on and getting to grips and learning how to interpret different statutes and codes and that sort of thing.
Cam, do you have any other skills that came to mind?
Yeah, I mean, just to add to what James said, I think that kind of the skills that you learn that set you apart as a mock trial advocate and then as a future advocate are those sort of thinking on your feet skills. I think being able to prepare really well and being able to learn the rules of evidence really well can only take you so far. And I think those are the things that come with practice, are the things that follow those and that build on top of those, because the thing that pairs well with good preparation is being able to respond to an objection you didn't know you were going to get, being able to think on your feet when the judge, you know, rules in a way that you weren't expecting, which means you can't get a certain piece of evidence in, and how are you going to proceed from there, and how is that going to impact the rest of the trial. And similarly with the rules of evidence, being able to articulate them in a way that is palatable to a judge and that makes sense in response to what opposing counsel has just said, rather than just knowing, you know, the actual rules of evidence. And I think that's something that I'm glad I learned in a mock trial sense before I even learned it from my evidence class, because I had friends who had done college mock trial that were like teaching me in the hard lounge of GW how to respond to evidence objections. And I think that's honestly the best way to learn it.
That's a great lead in my next question, which is again for you, Cam. Because you started mock trial while you were in law school, was there anything that you learned from mock trial, either about law or the practice of law, that you didn't get from your classroom experience?
Yes, like everything. I think that while law school and the academic aspect of law school can teach you a lot about how to think like a lawyer and how to develop good, you know, legal writing arguments and things like that that are going to help you as a practicing lawyer, I think mock trial is some of the more exciting factors, especially if you want to do litigation, about how to present yourself in the courtroom and how to appeal not just to your professor, but to people that are acting like a jury. And then in particular, rules of evidence, I think learning evidence in a mock trial setting is way better than learning it in a classroom. Like, evidence is exciting. It's the sexy part of being a lawyer. It's objection in court. So I think learning that in a mock trial setting, when you have to learn it anyway, if you're doing any type of litigation, is like the best way you can learn it.
I certainly agree. And I saw James nodding along frantically throughout that answer. So I think he agrees as well. This one's back to you, James. How has your mock trial experience helped you on the job hunt?
I'll throw you back to the answer of, answering questions you weren't really expecting getting for one. I'm in the middle of a recruitment right now, actually. And I think it's also helped orient a lot of what I want out of, a work culture. I give this answer as kind of canned, but it is true that I'm looking for a work environment that reminds me of my mock trial team in undergrad. These are people that you're working alongside with for nights and hours on end, trying to figure out the right objection argument or the right way to cross a certain expert witness, or a good way to get a direct examination or facts across to a jury, right? So it's really helped me orient exactly what I'm looking for in a job. And also it kind of gives me, decent answers to refer back to. I can point to the time where I had a good closing argument, or point to a time where I made an objection that didn't go so well, in response to those generic interview questions, times you failed. Even recently, last week, actually, I was asked to give a theme, a little hook in a speech on the spot. And fortunately, with the breadth of experience I had, I was able to just remember one.
Same question to you, Cam.
Yeah, I think on the other side of, once you're past the interview, because I think there's a lot of ways that you can spin anything on your resume to sound really amazing. And mock trial is one of those things where not only does it help you think on your feet in an interview, but it also helps you give good topics to talk about in an interview. And attorneys like people who have done pseudo attorney things, but also when you're actually in the job. For example, right now in my externship, something that the law clerks get to do is represent individuals in disciplinary hearings. So these are people that are in the DC jail right now. And let's say you have an infraction, you say something mean to an officer in the correctional facility, and then you get an infraction. And so the attorneys where I'm working help represent people in those types of hearings. And so the law clerks get to work on those because they're not really legal hearings. They're kind of more administrative. They're in front of the board of, correctional officers. They're not in front of a judge, but it's similar to a trial setting in the sense where you have a theme. You're convincing people who aren't lawyers to side with you. You're, appealing both to the law, like the policy manuals in this sense, and also to emotions and people's general sense of accountability and logic and all of these kind of themes that a lot of times in mock trial you play into more than you would play into in real trial. And I think having oral advocacy experience is crucial to being able to succeed in those experiences that you have when you're a student attorney and real clients are relying on you.
Outside of the skills you gain, the things you learn that you don't get from the classroom experience, and the help on the job hunt, why else should someone do mock trial?
Just a lot of fun too, right? It's a thrill of competition. It's that thrill that Cameron's talking to. We're talking about the external benefits, but also it's actually fun to do in the moment as well.
And you get to be a lawyer without those high stakes outcomes on the line, because a lot of times when you're actually having the thrill of practice as a real life attorney, it's combined with being really scared about what's going to happen based on the outcome or what's going to happen to your client. Mock trial, it's all gain and no loss. Even if you lose, you still have that experience under your belt.
That's it for part 1. Thanks for listening. If you're interested in trying out mock trial without committing to a competition, be on the lookout for information about Night Court, a weekly workshop we're putting together here at Nothing But Dicta. Or, to dip your toe in the water, consider being a witness for a competition. We'll see you next time.